Here we're going to get into the story of Jacob with his competition, who can have the most kids. He wanted to marry Rachel. His father-in-law tricked him and gave him Leah. Leah got her handmaid Bilhah to also be his wife, and Rachel couldn't have children, so she got her handmaid Zilpah, and they had competition, who can compete for dad's attention, and ended up with 12 sons and 1 daughter. Move over where you can see, brother. No, come on, you can't.
I'm okay.
Okay, so when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I die." Like, it's his fault. Obviously, his plumbing's working. I mean, he's got 5 kids from the other wife, so it's not his fault. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in God's stead? Who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb?" And she said, "Behold, my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may have children by her." And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife, and Jacob went in unto her, and Bilhah conceived, and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, "God hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son." Therefore called she his name Dan. Dan means judge. The names all mean something in the Bible, but based on something happening in their life at the time, typically. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived and bare a second son. And Rachel said, "With great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed." And she called his name Naphtali, which means wrestling. And when Leah saw that she had left bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son, and Leah said, "A troop cometh." And she called his name Gad, which means troop. And Zilpah had another one, and Leah said, "I'm happy. The daughters will call me blessed." And so she called him Asher. Remember, we're building the 12 tribes of Israel, which you'll see for the rest of the Bible, these 12 names. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest, and found mandrakes in the field, and brought them unto his mother Leah. What on earth is a mandrake? You're not going to believe it. I'm about to show you. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes." A mandrake is a root from a plant similar to a potato or a carrot. However, they nearly always have weird shapes and look like people. That's a mandrake. There are some mandrakes. Here is a mandrake. They pull these roots out and they look like people. So the legend started going around, "Oh, this is an aphrodisiac. This will turn you on, or this will make you more fertile and have more children," or something. So when they found mandrakes, Rachel said, "Give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes." So they thought this is going to make them get pregnant if they eat these things. Or just an aphrodisiac, turn them on, That's what they thought back in those days. I guess some people still do. So she said, "Give me some of these mandrakes." And they even do artwork looking like a person, It's a root of a plant. But that is sure strange looking, at least, Just Google mandrakes, you can see for yourself. And she said unto her, Is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldst thou take away my son's mandrakes also? Now you got to wonder, this guy Reuben, this boy who found these, he knew Mama wanted them. Why would he know that? Some kids learn too much too soon. And they get one-track mind and it's derailed. Later, you see this kid Reuben, who found these mandrakes and apparently knew what they were for, he goes and has sex with one of his other stepmothers. Yeah, Reuben. And that's why he lost the blessing and the birthright, and it went to Judah. And Jesus came through the line of Judah. Long, interesting story there. We'll get to that probably in about 100 years. So she said, "Hey, you took away my husband. Now you want to take away my son's mandrakes?" And Rachel said, "Therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes." It's my turn for the husband to stay with me, but I'm going to give you the husband tonight if you'll give me the mandrakes. They're fighting over this guy every day. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, "Thou must come in to me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes." And he lay with her that night, and God hearkened to Leah, and she conceived and bare Jacob the 6th son. And Leah said, "God hath given me my hire, because I've given my maiden to my husband." And she called his name Issachar, which means hire. And Leah conceived again, and bare Jacob the sixth son. And Leah said, God hath endowed me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I've borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun. Now, some women think their husband's going to love them if they do, A, B, C, D, E. No. The right kind of man will love you for what you are, not for what you do. Okay? See, love is a decision. You can decide to love somebody even if they're not lovable. God has decided he's going to love us, and we are not very lovable most of the time. But it's just a decision he made. I'm going to love you, and I want you to come to heaven. Okay. And afterwards she bare Dinah, a daughter, and called her name Dinah, the only girl that they had in the whole family. And later she went bad. And God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened her, and opened her womb, and she conceived and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. And Joseph means God shall add. And it came to pass, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said to Laban, his father-in-law, send me away that I may go to my own place and to my country. He's been there 14, 15, 16 years? Long time. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served thee, and let me go. For thou knowest my service which I have done thee. And Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. If you work for anybody, that boss ought to look at you and say, God is blessing me because of them. I got the sermon, How to Make Money and Spend It God's Way. You might want to get some of these for your kids. There are 4 kinds of workers. David, you'll appreciate this one. You've worked in shops with other people, right? 4 kinds of workers. Number 1 worker, he can see what needs to be done, and he does it. You don't ever have to tell him anything. He'll see, hey, the trash is full, go empty it. The floor's dirty, go sweep the floor. They can see what needs done. They just see it. Number 2 worker comes and asks, hey, boss, what's next? Number 3 worker must be asked. Won't do anything unless you ask him. Number 4 worker must be found in order to ask him. You've all had them, right? Met some of those before? Okay, yes, sir. The classic sermon, not original with me, but I dumbed it down 4th grade level, my typical style. So that's a great one if you want to get that. So your boss ought to look at you and say, I need that guy. You should be able to go to your boss, any boss, if you're the right kind of worker. You should say, boss, listen, I need a little more money on my paycheck. Okay, how much you need? I'm going to try to keep you. What do you want? I've had people like that, haven't we, Lady Di? Who said, look, we want you to stay with DAL or Creation Science forever. How much do you need to make you happy? We'll do what we can. We want the kind that are number 1 workers, I want to focus on what God's called me to do. I don't want to worry about mowing the grass and feeding the goats and, feeding the chickens. I need faithful people to do that. So he said, I've learned by experience that God's blessing me because of you. That's the way it ought to be. Okay. And he said, appoint me thy wages and I will give it. Tell me what you want. I want to keep you. That's what you want to hear your boss say. Name your price. How much do you want? And he said, thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me, for it was little which thou hast before I came. You were a poor man, Laban, and it is now increased to a multitude. I have increased the size of your flocks, which was their measure of wealth. So it's because of me you got a bunch of sheep and goats now. And the Lord hath blessed thee since my coming. And now when shall I provide for my own house? Hey, Laban, I've made you rich. I got 4 wives and a bunch of kids. How am I going to provide for my house? And he said, what shall I give thee? And Jacob said, thou shalt not give me anything. If thou wilt do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep thy flock. I will pass through all the flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and of such shall be my hire. I'm going to separate, he said, the spotted and speckled and multicolored critters from the solid color. Now, solid color is dominant among sheep. It's usually just like all white. He said, I'll separate the speckled ones, and I'm going to let you take all the multicolored ones off. I'm going to keep all the solid color ones. And then, after a couple of years, all those that are speckled and spotted from this herd are going to be mine. Laban thinks, I'm going to separate all the spotted sheep. You're going to have only the solid color, and you're going to take care of those, and only the babies that are spotted and speckled you're going to keep. Whoa, can't lose on that deal. He said, I will pass through thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, and the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and of such shall be my hire. I'm only going to get these speckled and spotted ones. So shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come. When it shall come for my hire before thy face, every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and brown among the sheep, that shall be counted stolen with me. So if I've got any solid color ones, I stole them. He's starting off with a herd of solid color ones, or flock, or gaggle, or pride, or whatever they call it. Flock, okay. And Laban said, Behold, I would it might be according to thy word. And he removed that day the he-goats that were ring-straked and spotted, and all the she-goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them to the hands of his sons. And he set 3 days' journey betwixt himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. There's a cool article on BibleFoundations.weebly.com about how sheep and some animals, they can see certain colors, and it influences their genetic code. They can eat certain things, and their babies turn out a different color. For instance, these female mice right here are genetically identical, yet a change in their diet of their pregnant and nursing mother is the reason the mouse on the right is brown instead of yellow and is thin instead of obese. So the diet of the mother influenced the babies. Yeah? Okay. Jacob took him rods of green poplar with the hazel and chestnut tree and pilled white strakes in them. I think all Bible scholars agree that pilled means he peeled. He peeled so white stripes would show. So he's got these sticks made out of poplar, and he peeled, and hazel and chestnut, he peeled them so there are white stripes in them. What is this? Well, and he set the rods which he had peeled before the flocks in the gutters and the watering troughs when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. There are dominant traits in sheep and what are called recessive traits. Now this wasn't discovered and really documented until 1865. At the end of the Civil War, Gregor Mendel did a lot of research with pea plants. He was a Catholic priest, did a lot of research with pea plants, the dominant and recessive genes. His work showed clearly that there are dominant and recessive. They didn't know about genes back then. They said there's something. You can get pure white, half white. You can get varieties. He worked with the peas, wrinkled peas and smooth peas. Typical biology student. I taught biology 15 years. They always do that in biology class. Okay. Problem is, Jacob knew something about recessive traits way back 4,000 years earlier. He knew which sheep to let in there to crossbreed with the other ones, and he was going to end up with all the recessive traits and make a herd out of them. And ended up slowly stealing, well, I guess he didn't steal them, he got it fair and square. That was the deal. Got his father-in-law's flocks over a couple of years. Sheep will lamb twice a year. Gregor Mendel's work was largely ignored when it came out 1865 because Darwin's theory came out same time, 1859. Mendel proved changes happen, but they were limited to information that's already in the gene code. You can get a speckled sheep or a plain sheep, but you're not going to get wings or feathers or a beak on your sheep. You're going to get hair. Now it might be brown hair, white hair, black hair, but it's going to be hair, not a feather. So the changes that happen are limited. And I covered that on video number 4, Lies in the Textbooks. But Darwin thought, oh no, there are no limits to these changes. Oh yes, boys and girls, this is what the textbooks teach today. Birds, crocodiles, humans, apes, fish, everything is related to a common ancestor. They observe little changes like skin color and go jump to the wild, idiotic conclusion that this means we're all related. There are 8 varieties of bears in the world. They might have had a common ancestor. A bear. That's as far as it goes. It's always going to be a bear. That doesn't prove bears and bananas are related. But Mendel's work was ignored because of Darwin's theory, and I think that was largely a political thing, because that was a time of many revolutions going on in the world. You know, get rid of the king. We cover that on video number 4 and 5 of my series. Anyway, and they didn't want God telling them what to do, so and the Bible says honor the king, and so long, interesting story. Okay, back to 39. And the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle ring-straked, speckled, and spotted, which is what he wanted. He gets to keep those. And Jacob did separate the lambs, and set the faces of the flocks toward the ring-straked, and all the brown of the flock in the flock of Laban, and he put his own flocks by themselves, and put them not in unto Laban's cattle. So he divided the solid color from the speckled and spotted. Because those, he slowly, over a period of a couple years, got the whole flock to be his. And it came to pass, whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. Strange verse. I don't understand it. I'm going to give you the 3 theories about what this means. Because I don't know. I'd like to know. I've thought about it for 49 years. I can't figure it out. But when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger were Jacob's. So here he is. Laban's all upset. Hey, what happened? I gave you a flock of all solid color sheep, and now you got all spotted. How'd you do this? You got all my sheep. Well, that was the deal. Keep in mind, Jacob is a trickster. So is Laban, by the way. Remember, he gave him the wrong woman for a wife? These guys are, they deserve each other as son-in-law and father-in-law, okay? They deserve each other. What happened? How come you got all the sheep and I got the feeble ones? So Laban is, what did you do to me? Now, here's the Hovind theory. Just the vision of the pilled rods was like an aphrodisiac to the goats and caused them to go in heat. That's one theory. So he could decide which ones he wants to go in heat and breed and conceive based on these rods, whatever they did. Probably a visual thing. You know, certain animals, just like a dog will jump on your knee and start wanting to mate with your knee. Just a certain pressure on the xiphoid tip will cause that. Okay, bulls do that. Anybody that raises any animal can tell you that. There's certain things that they see, or that they put them in a certain position, and they start automatically getting that impulse to mate. The second theory, the vision or the minerals in the rods affected the mothers like the mice picture. Maybe there's just something, they saw this and it affected them, or maybe there's some minerals in these rods. I don't know. Third theory, he's artificially inseminating them. He's got rods, and the sheep go in there to get a drink, and they clamps their neck in place, and he can artificially inseminate them. I don't know. I can't think of a better one. It's got to be one of those 3 in my book. If you think of something else, let me know. If you farmers out there know what Jacob was doing, tell me, because I'd like to know. Anyway, so the man increased exceedingly, and had much cattle, and maidservants, and men servants, and camels, and asses. He got rich. Laban or his lazy boys could have done the same thing. But Jacob offered to take care of the sheep. Oh, sure, go ahead, take care of the sheep. And he slowly stole them all. Laban got 14 years of Jacob's labor for his 2 daughters, remember? That was supposed to be their dowry. So the girls never really got any dowry, did they? Because in Bible times, you know, if you want to marry a daughter, you got to give the dad, $5,000, and she keeps that in a safe someplace, and if you run off, she's got your money, so she can go ahead and go on with her life. Well, he got 14 years free labor out of this guy. Okay, who gets to keep all those sheep? The girl should have. Right? That was his labor. So he got him. He got his father-in-law. He got him back. They were probably bitter about this fact that their dad did not give them a dowry. And you'll see that in the next couple chapters. The bitterness of these 2 girls with their own dad. So that's Genesis chapter 30. Interesting chapter. I don't understand it all, but there's quite a few things in that book I don't understand. And that's, if you get any better ideas, let me know. I'm open for it. So, what kind of worker are you? Is your boss glad you work for him? Or is he looking for a way to get rid of you? It ought to be. He says, man, I can't be without you. I need you. How much do you need? I've got to have a guy like you. What do you need? And if you be unreasonable, of course, they won't do that. But the right kind of work I'd suggest you get for your kids, if they're lazy bum, not doing their homework or anything else, get this video. Get a stack up and give them to every kid you know. One of my favorite sermons. And then, how do you spend your money? Some people are really good at making money, but don't have a clue how to spend it. There are 4 things you can spend your money on. 4 kinds of workers can see it, and he does it, comes and asks what's next. You got to be asked. You got to tell him. Got to ask him to do something, and then you got to find him. That's number 4. But the 4 places to spend your money. You have to get the video to watch that one.